while I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that thou gavest me I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled.
But something has changed at CNN, and listen carefully to this soundbite. This is a couple of the automatons at CNN talking about what they see as the origin of coronavirus now.
This matters. Understanding where coronavirus and how the pandemic began matters. A lot of the discussion about the lab leak, I think, was clouded early on because there was the suggestion by some that it was somehow a Chinese weapon that caused this. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a lab accident. But we've come a long way from people dismissing this as a conspiracy theory to a lot of people taking this seriously, Maggie.
We have, John, and look, I do think it's important to remember that part of the issue when this was first being reported on and discussed back a few months after the pandemic had begun was that then President Trump and Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, both suggested they had seen evidence that this was formed in a lab, and they also suggested it was not released on purpose, but they refused to release the evidence showing what it was. And so because of that, that made this instantly political. I think that it was, example 1000 when the Trump administration learned that when you have burned your own credibility over and over again, people are not immediately going to believe you, especially in an election year. However, that does not mean it's not worth discussing. There has been a sort of persistent, albeit relatively quiet, focus on whether that was the origin of the virus, and it is compounded by the fact that there have not been clear answers from Chinese officials about it, and that investigators trying to find out the origin have been stymied. So I do think we're in a different period of this, John, but I also think it's important to remember because I think it's getting reframed in a way that's just not true to what happened. I don't mean here. I mean in this broader debate by Trump supporters about what happened when this was originally raised.
I think a lot of people want just answers at this point, and it is important.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Well, you're not going to get them there. I guarantee you that. You're not going to get answers there. So help me figure this out, Edward. Are they saying that the reason why they couldn't talk about the virus coming from the lab accidentally is because the previous people within the Trump administration accused of it being a bioweapon? Is that what they're telling me?
We have not funded gain-of-function research on this virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, no matter how many times
you're parsing
you say
words.
it,
There was research. There was research done with Dr. Shi and Dr. Barrick. They have collaborated on gain-of-function research where they enhanced the SARS virus to infect human airway cells, and they did it by merging a new spike protein on it. That is gain-of-function. That was joint research between the Wuhan Institute and Dr. Barrick. You can't deny it.
Well, now they're having to admit it's man-made, and Fauci now says, looks like it may have come from a lab in China.
I think that we should continue to investigate what went on in China until we find out, to the best of our ability, exactly what happened.
A Wuhan origin for the virus is a no-brainer. Wuhan is home to China's leading center for coronavirus research. Researchers were genetically engineering bat coronaviruses to attack human cells. They were doing so under minimal safety conditions. If the virus with an uninspected infectiousness had been generated there, its escape would be no surprise. Journalists want to know. Secretary of State wants to know. Secretary of Health and Human Services want to know, journalists want to know, Republicans want to know, Americans want to know. Why don't Democrats in Congress want to know where this thing started?
They've concluded that it's most likely that the virus came through transmission from bats to human via another animal, and very unlikely it came from a Wuhan lab.
Any researcher trying to do so, especially from aborted fetuses. This point is key to the difference between impact and guilt, because it means that current vaccine research, while it has been impacted by past abortion, is not guilty of promoting current abortions. All of these facts have led to a consensus among the leading Christian bioethicists. The consensus is that Christians, including pro-life Christians, are encouraged to take the COVID vaccine.
First of all, that man was lying. I'll tell you that right now. I saw him lie.
How do you know?
I watched his eyes. And if I could play, I'm not going to play it again, but watch his eyes after he made a statement. He blinked his eyes 3 times in a row. He lied.
You knew he was lying?
He knew he was lying.
Any researcher trying to do so, especially from aborted fetuses. This point is key to the difference between impact and guilt, because it means that current vaccine research, while it has been impacted by past abortion, is not guilty of promoting current abortions. Is not guilty of promoting current abortions.
In a series of internal documents published by Project Veritas, Facebook's Ministry of Truth has been caught overseeing a mass disinformation campaign focused on curbing vaccine hesitancy by blocking and shadow banning real reports about COVID vaccine side effects and, most importantly, deaths.
Standing up for a world I want my children to live in. I don't want to leave them a world to where they don't have these liberties. People aren't allowed to have voice, and yet Facebook touts itself with promoting people's opportunity to have voice. They're trying to control this content before it even makes it onto your page, before you even see it. If I lose my job, it's like, what do I do? But that's less of a concern to me.
Now, there was a story here a few months back, Edward, that I have to ask the question, is Mark Zuckerberg himself in violation of Facebook's own policy? Because if I recall correctly, Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, look at those eyes, man. That should scare you right there. Either he's staying up really late or something. But Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg took an anti-vax stance in violation of his own platform's new policy. He said, I share some caution on this vaccine because we just don't know the long-term side effects of
basically modifying people's DNA and RNA to directly encode in a person's DNA and RNA, basically the ability to produce those antibodies, and whether that causes other mutations or other risks downstream.
Wow, this is the Holy Grail. They actually gave them the documents, Veritas. And they've confirmed these are their documents, hundreds of pages, where they say even if it's true and someone got sick or died, you are to suppress it because it's for the greater good that some die for the whole. And that's what I was told by the deputy director of the Texas Health Department.
Facebook is lifting its ban on posts that claim COVID-19 was man-made or manufactured.
Look, it's very clear from this 15-page dossier that's been prepared by concerned Western governments that China deliberately covered up evidence of the virus early on in a pure case of negligence, and this has directly contributed to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people getting sick and dying the world over. These are just the facts that the dossier lays out, and you know, this isn't ideology, this isn't propaganda, these are just the facts.
David Asher, a former lead investigator, told Shari Markson in March that at least 3 scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were hospitalised in November 2019 with symptoms similar with the coronavirus. And that was weeks before China disclosed the outbreak to the world.
Again, I think what's happening now is that the plan to bring about the New World Order in a relatively easy frog boiling in the gradually increasing temperature water failed. What we're seeing is increasingly a desperate attempt to try to get things in place in a way that they can't be destroyed because their original plans fell apart.